Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to Anti-Haul number 10. Oh my gosh, it's anti-haul time. I'm so excited. One of my favorite videos to do. I'm really excited. Also, it is a really beautiful day here in the Vancouver area, so my window's wide open, so you may hear some traffic, you may hear some other sounds. Peggy's in the other room sewing. We're just gonna roll with it because I'm really excited to get into everything. So if you are new to my anti-hauls, let's talk about a couple simple disclaimers. In general, on my channel, I like to keep it positive. So I like to focus primarily on the decks that aren't working for me and why they're not going to work for me, why I'm not going to buy them or back them or what have you. But it's always personal taste, and I can't stress that enough. There are a ton of things that I've anti-hauled that you all go run off and buy and love and adore. Sometimes I anti-haul something and later I run off and buy it and adore it. So it is always subject to change and personal taste. Please keep it kind in the comments. I like to just remember that our creators are sacred and special in this community, and I want them to feel good and feel loved, even if the thing that they've created isn't quite for me. So if you guys just do the same, we'll all be happy and we'll be able to have a good time here in the anti-haul space. And let's see, what other disclaimers? Oh yeah, I reserve the right to change my mind. So sometimes, like I said, I'll anti-haul something and later I'll buy it. So, you know, this is just my feelings in this particular moment. Always subject to change. I am also currently working on a video to share with you guys the things that I have previously anti-hauled and caved on. So that is coming soonish when I can make the time to make that particular video. Also, my nose is itchy, so it's always a good time. I have my iced coffee. I hope you have something to snack on, to drink, to eat, to keep yourself occupied and feeling cozy, because these videos also tend to run real long. Our first category are decks that I regret purchasing. And the first of these is a very recent purchase for me, and that is the Shaman's Dream Oracle by Alberta Villoldo and Colette Barron-Reid. I have feelings about this because I wanted so badly to love this deck, and in fact a conversation started in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group with somebody else who had purchased this deck and was disappointed by the cardstock and just generally disappointed. And I was trying to reserve judgment. I got my copy, I did my walkthrough, I was like, cardstock's not so bad, right? But what I wanted this deck to be, it just wasn't. And I don't think that it was even meant to be the deck that I wanted it to be. What I wanted was the Mystical Shaman Oracle, just like almost like an add-on to that deck, even though I don't have that deck, which I'll talk about. But I wanted it to be a lot like that deck. Similar production quality, similar cardstock, similar style of artwork, just with keywords. Because I ended up passing on the Mystical Shaman Oracle because the artwork was stunning. I loved the themes, the very shaman-y feeling themes that were in that deck. But I didn't love the lack of keywords. It was just titles, and I just didn't end up bonding with it. My dog. I'm supposed to be folding laundry right now, by the way. Hopefully you're folding laundry or being productive. I was supposed to fold laundry. I did not. There's a pile of sheets and towels over there in my walk-in closet, and Shayla has just decided to make a nest out of those and have a little nappy nap. So that's happening. Yeah, anyways, back to this. So Mystical Shaman, yeah, I really wanted this to be like that, just a newer version. And this one does have keywords, so I was really invested. But I have to admit I was disappointed by a couple of things. I was disappointed mostly by the fact that this doesn't feel, it probably is, but it doesn't feel shaman-y to me, or it doesn't have that same sort of really earthy feel. This feels a lot more fantasy. It just feels a little bit more, it does feel more dreamy, which obviously was the intent. So it was probably successful when you think about what the creators were trying to accomplish with this deck. But I can't stand the backs. The backs drive me crazy. They don't feel congruent with the deck at all to me. And it's just me. It's, again, just a personal taste thing. But I just couldn't. And I tried to work with this deck, and I think I was just, it's so not what I wanted it to be. And I think because the Mystical Shaman Oracle was such beautiful, luscious cardstock and such a nice quality deck, that I think this deck really highlights the differences between that beautiful, thick, glorious matte cardstock that Hay House did use to this cardstock, which they seem to be currently using. Other decks with that glorious cardstock that Hay House had put out was the Animalkin Oracle. But I don't know if the current version of Animalkin Oracle is also this cardstock. But I'm not really a fan of this. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that I know that it could be so much better. And I think because of that, I'm a little bit snobby about it. But this is totally fine cardstock in my opinion. It does feel a little bit papery. You can probably hear that. But it's fine. It's fine. It's matte. It's not uber glossy. It's not really reflective. It just doesn't feel... It's not as exciting to me to touch and to hold, and I can be very tactile and funny that way. So this is one that I don't think I will be keeping in my collection, and I'm not sure. I'm still kind of tossing the idea around, but not thrilled with that one. What I love instead is the Enchanted Map Oracle. Also by Colette Baron Reid. Now this is the newer version. I did have the older version. This was one of the first Oracle decks that I really bonded with. And this is still glossy. And I think it's otherwise the same cardstock. It's just matte, glossy coated. But this glossy cardstock feels better than that other matte cardstock. I am a big fan of the Enchanted Map Oracle. Is it still in order? Yeah, because I haven't used this new version yet. I recently replaced my older one. But I love this artwork. I'm kind of covering up the titles, I think. So let's try it this way. And I've had a lot of time to get to know this artwork. And the funny thing is that sometimes these are titles. Like that previous one was what? Goblins? Where was that? Mountain. Goblins. Right? So theoretically, I should have the same problem with this that I did with the Mystical Shaman Oracle, Balancing Act. But I don't. I really love this. And this is like the older Colette Baron Reid, Jenna De La Grataglia style deck that I really love. So this one and Wisdom of the Oracle are sitting near the top of my list for Colette's decks. And they're their older ones. So I think there's something to be said about that. And I think in future, any current collaborations or future collaborations between Colette Baron Reid or other people and Colette Baron Reid and Jenna De La Grataglia, I'm probably going to be a lot slower to pick up and maybe watch more walkthroughs and things to see if it's something I'm actually going to like. Because at the end of the day, I think the litmus test for whether or not it's a deck that should come home with me is going to be, will I like it as much or more than the Enchanted Map or Wisdom of the Oracle? And if the answer to that question is no, then I'm not going to pick it up. Probably. Depends on the theme, but I just really like these so much. So that is definitely one. Wow, I've been talking a long time. We have many decks to get through. So next up, decks I regret purchasing. The Hero's Journey Dream Oracle. There's a caveat to this. So I have, this is kind of a complicated one. I'm just going to talk about what I love instead right away, because what I love instead is the Hero's Journey Dream Oracle, which I know you're like, what, huh? And I talked about this recently, but this is a Blue Angel deck. This is what the backings look like. I love this deck, but I recently purchased a new copy of it because I had hoped it was in the new cardstock that Hay House has been putting out, which is perfect in every way, in my opinion. It is thick, it is matte, it is silky feeling, it's buttery, it's like, it shuffles good, it's like all the good things, not rose petally, not sticky or clingy, it's perfect. And I love this deck so much. If you've had a client reading from me, you may have seen this because I do use it pretty regularly in my client readings. Depends on which one and which question and so forth, but I do use this a lot. So I was really excited about the possibility to get this in matte cardstock, so I purchased it again, and it came in exactly the same as this one. So I've got an email into Hay House. Hopefully they get, or not Hay House, but into Blue Angel. Hopefully they get back to me and tell me how we can tell which of their decks are coming out in the new matte cardstock and how to tell if that's what we're ordering when we order, because I really want this in matte cardstock. It's beautiful glossy as well. It's just more practical because I use it for client readings and videos and things if it was matte. So for me, it's more practical if it's matte. I still love the crap out of this and use the crap out of this, even though it's glossy, because it's beautiful. It's stunning. I love this deck. So it's kind of a cheat because, like, I regret buying a second copy of the exact same deck, but then again, I don't really, because I did a little something with that deck. But I need to be more patient and wait for these matte versions to come out and to be sure they're out before I hit the buy button, because yeah. So our next category is going to be mass market decks that I'm not going to buy. And the first one of these that I want to talk about is the Sacred Hags Oracle. So I'm going to put that up in a picture somewhere. So I'm actually really proud of myself for not buying this deck. And I think that's a theme you're going to see come up a lot in these anti-hauls, is when I was able to talk myself out of a purchase that probably would have been superfluous in my collection or would have been redundant in some way, or that I wouldn't really work work with that much. I've been trying to be really mindful of decks where it's like, I'll bring this in and that's fine, but I already have something that does that for me in my collection. And if you don't already know this about me, or if you're new here, typically the way I like to manage decks is I love variety in my tarot and oracle deck. And I call it a collection because I don't know what other word would work for that. And I do enjoy having a large variety of decks to choose from, but I also don't enjoy having a whole bunch of decks that sort of fit into the same category in my practice, because what ends up happening then is that I don't get to use the things I love the most as much as I want to. Does that make any sense? And for me, because I do client readings, because I make videos, I get to play with my decks more than I would or did before YouTube. So having a wide variety doesn't feel overwhelming, but at a certain point it does. And at a certain point, if I have too many decks that kind of fill the same space for me, that's when I really start to look at, do I need to be careful about bringing something into this category? So a category like that is the Sacred Hags Oracle. It was really appealing to me because it was really different. There's not a lot of Oracle or Tarot decks that really dive into, I would say, the crone stage in a person's life, or the, when we look at Maiden, Mother, Crone kind of energy as an archetypal energy, that later stage of life, which is definitely a stage I'm moving into, right? I'm definitely, I would say, at the tail end of the mother stage of my life and starting to make that transition. And so these sorts of things are really appealing to me. I also found it really appealing that the creator of the deck was Daniel Dulski, who I think has a really poetic way with words. So that was really appealing. And I just felt like it was really exciting to me. But I waited, and I'm so glad that I did. I waited until images came out of the deck. And then I was so close to, I mean, I'm not kidding. It was in my cart. I was ready to hit the buy button. And I also did the same thing around pre-order. I was ready to pre-order so many times and I didn't pull the trigger. And what ultimately stopped me was the art style. So I'll show you some examples or you'll see it in the picture. But the art style is very like line worky, a little bit minimalist, I guess you could say, and that typically is not a kind of art that I am drawn to. So I held off for that reason. And then the more that I saw about it, the way that the packaging was, there was just a bunch of little things that were like, I'm suddenly not as excited about this idea anymore. So I really sat down and asked myself, what do I have in my collection that has this kind of depth, that really looks at that crone energy, and lets me really explore that archetype? And I was like, Lisa, the Weaver's Oracle. So this is my Weaver's Oracle. This deck, which I edged to match the backings, which are this like gorgeous like tapestry design. This deck has so much depth and so much wisdom, and anybody who has this deck or has worked with this deck can probably attest. This is the kind of deck where you can pull a single card and work with it for like a week or a month or even a season if you wanted to, or a moon cycle. And I have worked with this deck in that way. And I feel like when I really feel called to reach into crone wisdom, to really look at like that ancestral sort of deep spiritual ancestry, this is definitely a deck that calls to me. And it's got so much richness and beauty to it that, do I need anything else in this category? And I don't necessarily think that I do. This is very much that Sacred Hag archetype. This is very much the crone archetype in a deck. So do I need another one? No. Does that mean I will never get another one? No. But I think Sacred Hags was not the one for me. Oh, lip gloss, hair. Oh, why does that happen? So yeah, I'm really glad that I said no to Sacred Hags, because the Weaver's Oracle is really beautiful. And I think if I had too much in this category, this one, which is already a deck that I reach for at specific times when I'm really called to reach for it, I think if I had too much in this category, this would be enjoyed even less, and that's what I don't want. So that is the Weaver's Oracle. So another mass market deck that I'm not going to buy is the Forest Fae Oracle. This one is all over YouTube, at least right now at the time that I'm filming this, and it is so adorable. It's one of those little mini decks, which I think are super cute. I've only ever bought 2 others of those mini decks. I was going to reach for one, but it's just out of reach over there. The Making Magic cards, which I use the crap out of, those are by Priestess Moon, and they're just a little mini deck, and they've got sigils. I use those in every single client reading. I use them for magical work. They get a ton of play. They're out on my reading table all of the time. Great purchase. And the other one I had was the Whispering Woods Oracle, which was just little messages. All the backings were the same. That one I passed along. What I love about the Forest Fae Oracle is these adorable little fae creatures, and each one kind of has their own energy and their own demeanor. their own personality, and they have these like little messages. It's really cute. I could totally see getting tons of use out of it. I think it would pair really well with fairy tale type decks, but I stopped myself. It's really adorable. Like, it's not like I wouldn't use it. It's that I've got other things that I also really, really love. And the thing that I was thinking of that I could reach for instead, the thing from my own collection that really scratches that itch, is the Fairies Oracle by Brian Froud. Similar to, I think, the Forest Fae Oracle, this one is just the OG Fairy Oracle, in my opinion. And it is, I think it's really hard for anything to compete with this deck, because these characters have a ton of personality. The book for this deck is excellent. It's a really... Oh, I'm trying to get away from the glare. It's a really deep deck, and when it comes to working with Fae energy, this one was the whole thing upside down that whole time? No, I just have a lot of reversals in here. I do work with reversals with this deck because the book has reversed meanings, and I think they're really good, so I like to work with those. This is not a deck I use with clients. I only use this for myself, but when I want to dig into Fae energy from an Oracle deck perspective, this is definitely the one, and it isn't one that I feel the need to replace at this point. Like, it kind of scratches the itch. It checks all the boxes. It does all the things. So, like, why would I get another one kind of thing? But that Forest Fae Oracle, that thing's cute, and it's really affordable. So if you're looking for something like that and you don't have or aren't drawn to the fairy deck, I think it would be a really good one. But it's just not for me. So, or at least not at this time. I guess I don't need it. It's not that it's not for me. It's that I just don't need it right now. So I'm not going to get it. The other one in this category that I wanted to talk about in mass market decks I'm not going to buy are the Archeo archetype cards. And this one's been really hard to resist because both Danny and Dustin have this deck and are raving about this deck. And of course, on this, somebody recently told me, I think it was Rebecca Getchall, who's, I'll try to remember to link her channel down below. She's adorable, but she commented to me, she'd been recently watching a bunch of Three Fat Readers episodes. If you don't know what Three Fat Readers is, brief segue. Three Fat Readers is a collab channel between myself, Danny of Danny Mystic, and Dustin of Modern Metaphysicae. We get together once a month and we talk about all kinds of stuff. But anyways, so Rebecca was commenting that it's kind of like the scale. It's like there's a spectrum of deck tastes, and it's like Dustin's at one end and like I'm on the other end, and Danny's like kind of in the middle, like leaning more towards Dustin's taste than my taste, I would say. So we're like a spectrum, we're like a scale. And on the scale of that taste, the Archeo archetype cards definitely leans way more towards Danny and Dustin's side. So I guess it shouldn't be a big surprise. But on the other hand, I am fascinated by and absolutely inspired by archetypes. So in theory, I should want all the archetypes decks that I could get my hands on. But as it turns out, because I'm so passionate about the topic, much like chakras, I'm incredibly, painfully picky about archetypes decks, just like I'm incredibly painfully picky about chakra-based decks. Same thing. So from an archetypes perspective, the only archetype deck that I feel like I've currently really been able to bond with and love the heck out of are these Wild Unknown archetype cards. And I think it's because these step away from the usual archetypes. So they really are great for my brain. Not fond of the backs, but they don't drive me crazy. I just don't love them. But these are great. And there's a lot of really unique archetypes. This is definitely something that Kim Krans put a lot of effort and imagination and inspiration behind, because there's just a lot of really, really great archetypes in here that take you beyond the classical, I would say, more Jungian archetypes. I think that's right. Somebody correct me if it's not Jung, but I just feel like this just gives me so much more and so much to work with, and I really enjoy the artwork, which I didn't think I was going to. I love the fact that the deck is round. This is a great one. So right now, I don't feel like I need to have any other archetypes decks in my collection. And the Archeo deck, while it's pretty, I'm not feeling called to it right now. It's not speaking to me, so I'm not going to get it. But really love the Wild Unknown archetype cards. And if you're into archetypes, you might want to take a look at the Archeo deck. It looks really interesting. There hasn't been a lot of hype around it at this point, so you may not have even heard of it. So definitely check it out if you're into it, just not my thing. And next, we have a new category. These are going to be independent decks that I'm not going to buy. So when it comes to indie decks, I feel like I'm way quicker to buy independent decks these days, and I think it's because a lot of certain publishers of mass market decks, their decks start to feel very samey. They have very similar themes, they have very similar approaches to the topic of tarot. and Oracle, I guess you should say, but I think I guess I'm pickier when it comes to tarot. But when it comes to independent decks, there's no limit, right? It's the creator's creativity. It can be anything, particularly when we get into oracles, but I think all the decks I have in this category are tarot. So it's sometimes harder for me to say no or to really talk myself out of a really cool indie deck. And I'm trying to feature decks in this series that really truly tempted me in some way. Sometimes I don't, but a lot of times I try to pull ones that have really tempted me. The first of these is the Hidden Messages Tarot. Now this is one where I was really excited when I first saw it and then immediately like crashed. It was definitely like, you know, when you go up a roller coaster, it's like tick, 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 and you can feel the excitement building, right? And then you get to the top and you see how far the drop is, and then it's like a psh, it's like a crash. That's what that was like for me, because Dustin was showing this on one of his live streams, Dustin Modern Metaphysic, Dustin. And as he was flipping through the cards, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It's so cool. And then he got to some cards and I was like, wait, actually, no, this is horrible. I hate this. It was such a dramatic shift for me between like, I was really excited for it to, oh no, never in a million years. I had the reaction to it at the end of the day, like I did to the, what's that other really creepy deck? Some of you guys are going to remember. Hayworth. I had the same reaction to it that I did the Hayworth Tarot, but it just was like it like snuck up on me, which was really weird. But it has this kind of quirky, kind of morbid, but also kind of funny take. It's just that the cards that are like intense are too intense in a way. And I told Dustin, I said, you know, it really reminds me a lot of the Zombie Tarot. So this is definitely what I would love instead. The Zombie Tarot has morbidity. It has like a horror element, but it's got this, and it's got the same kind of like vintagey sort of vibe that I think that Hidden Messages Tarot has. But the Zombie Tarot just has this quirk and this humor to it that makes it all more palatable to me. It feels like a 1950s sitcom about zombies more than it feels like something that's like actually scary or too confronting. So this one is really, really great for that. I really love the Zombie Tarot. I've talked about it a bunch on my channel. It typically comes out for me around the Halloween time. But it's a great reader at all times. I just don't usually bring it out at other times of the year because it just doesn't feel quite right. And the bag that I have for this is literal perfection. Can we just talk about this for a second? Like literally like 1950s zombie bag to match my 1950s zombie deck. It was one of my favorite bag deck matches ever of all time. Love this deck. But yeah, the Hidden Messages Tarot, not for me, but it is really unique and really cool if you like that style. So probably check it out if that's your thing. Let's move on now to the next one, which is the Cosmic Woman Tarot. I wanted to love this. It's really pretty. I think I saw this one on Etsy. I will have links to everything I'm talking about in the description box below, as always. I find myself less and less drawn to decks that I feel like I wouldn't want to reach for a client, which isn't to say that I don't have tons of decks that I use just for myself. It's just that I have tons of decks that I use just for myself. So I don't feel the need to add a lot in this area unless it really, really calls to me. The thing about the Cosmic Woman Tarot is I have something, that's what it's called, right? Yeah, Cosmic Woman Tarot. I had to double check. The thing about that is that I have other decks that I feel like bring in this divine feminine energy in a way where it feels like it's really universal divine feminine, not like femininity or women as a whole. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like, it feels like universal feminine energy. I can't seem to get at the point I'm trying to make, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that when I saw this, I immediately thought of a different deck in my collection, and that is, I've got it in a beautiful Danny Mystic bag. Look at that gorgeous Danny Mystic. It's so perfect for this deck, I just can't even. The Divine Feminine Tarot by Kokarina. This one is so beautiful. The gold and the black really help it to feel to me like a very cosmic energy kind of deck. I feel like it's almost like I'm looking into the sky at constellations of these figures and scenes rather than like anything that's trying to depict life on Earth, if that makes any sense. And so it keeps it in that cosmic space. I'm not the biggest fan of the backs of these decks, but I do think the execution of the artwork in this deck is really stunning and definitely makes me think of cosmic energy or divine energy. And so I have something that really fits the bill so perfectly in this space that the Cosmic Woman Tarot to me feels like it would probably be redundant in my collection. So I decided to pass on it, but it is real pretty. It's real pretty. Another deck that recently tempted me in the independent space is the Future Ancestor Tarot. Have you seen this? Oh my gosh. It's so pretty and it's got so much like depth and slowness to it. You know, when you look at a deck and it feels like it's going to take you by the hand and walk you slowly through its theme. That's what this feels like to me. It feels very gentle, but also like wise and full of depth. Really exciting as a concept, and something that really tempted me. And I decided though that the limited color palette was enough of a pause that I was able to like pull myself back from hitting that buy button and like think about what I already had that might do the same kind of thing for me. And immediately what sprung to mind was my Witch's Wisdom Tarot by Phyllis Curott, and I forget the artist's name, I'm sorry. But this deck, this is my slow, deep wisdom deck. The one that makes me feel connected to my both my spiritual growth and my witchy practice. The one that feels very earthy and connected to deep wisdom. This one definitely does that for me. And yet it's also so full of like vibrant color, and the artwork is very evocative. I've really taken the time to bond with this deck as well. So I feel like I've gotten to know it pretty well, and that my relationship with this deck will only continue to grow. So I think if I wanted a future ancestor style reading, this has that same energy that I picture the future ancestor tarot having. So for me, this scratches the itch, and I don't feel like I really need to go and grab that deck. Although, again, very, very tempting. And I could see that being, of all the things I've talked about, I think in this video so far, I think the future ancestor is one I could see myself potentially changing my mind on in the future. But for now, this will scratch the itch, and I think I've got lots more time to get to know and bond with this deck even more than I have already. Next category is going to be decks I'm not going to pre-order. I have gotten a lot better, I will admit, at not pre-ordering decks in general. I don't need to be the first person to like have a deck and show the deck on my channel, so I don't need to try to get the deck quickly or anything like that. I'm pretty good at slowing myself down most of the time, unless I'm fairly confident right out of the gate that this is a deck I know I'm going to like and use. Then I don't really feel the need to be like first, and pre-ordering to me is a way to be like early, to be first in that process. If I'm pre-ordering, it's because I know for sure I'm bringing it in, and I don't always want to commit to things that early. I don't always know that early if something's going to work, and sometimes I'm tempted by a pre-order before there's even like card preview images, because the theme is really exciting and like I can get drawn into that. But the reality is that there's not often an urgency for me to bring something in, because I have so much to play with and work with. And I think also this year specifically, because I've been working with a deck a month and not a deck a week, that's really, really helped my practice, because it's reminded me that I have lots and lots of time to spend with the decks I already have. And the decks that I've brought in, I've got a rack of probably, actually I can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I have at least 14 decks, plus a couple in the other room that I haven't filmed my walkthroughs of yet, that are new to me and that I've had for some time. Some of them I've had for some time that I haven't worked with yet, and like nothing bad is happening. So like I don't need to be in a rush. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, is I don't need to be in a hurry, and I have enough things that I can pull off my I haven't worked with you yet rack to play with, that craving to bring something new in isn't there the same way. And I think that's been a really interesting blessing of slowing things down in 2021, and just really like taking my time with the decks that I'm working with, is reminding myself that like there's no urgency to bring more in, because I've got so much still to play with. So I think that's been really, really helpful. I kind of went off on a side tangent there, but hopefully that's helpful to somebody. However, when it comes to pre-ordering decks, sometimes you just know, right? Sometimes you just know. These are some ones where I was able to talk myself away from pre-ordering, even when tempted. The first of these I want to talk about is the Shadowland Lenormand. I'll put a picture up, as always. The reason it was easy for me to say no to this one is because I have the Shadowland, the House of Shadows. I forgot it had a different name. I have the House of Shadows Lenormand. And actually, now that I'm thinking about this, I'm not yet 100% sure if the Shadowland Lenormand is, or is it called the House of Shadows Lenormand? Am I going to regret this in editing? Maybe. But I'm pretty sure it's called the Shadowland Lenormand. Anyways, the thing about that's by Monica Badursky, the creator of the Shadowland Tarot, which ultimately I loved the Shadowland Tarot. I worked with it for a short time. I did a really deep dive walkthrough, which was super fun, but ultimately I ended up passing that deck along, partly because I could not get along with the cardstock. That's a whole other thing. But the House of Shadows Lenormand I bought, it was when it's independent. It was independent. But the House of Shadows Lenormand that I have, the copy that I have of Monica's Lenormand deck, I'm really tripping over my words, is black and white. So this is what the backings of my deck look like, and here's the fronts. Now I will say black and white decks typically are not my favorite, just like limited color palette decks are not my favorite. I guess those are the same thing. And the new one that Monica has coming out looks like it's going to be in full color. So I was actually really, really tempted. However, there's something really fun about the black and white sketchiness of this Lenormand deck. And also, this is a Lenormand deck that I don't reach for a ton. I typically reach for my more colorful Lenormand decks before I'll reach for this one. And to be honest, so far in 2021, I haven't been reaching for Lenormand a lot. So I don't feel like I need a lot of Lenormand decks anyways. And just in general, I feel like I have more than enough Lenormand. Like I have something cute, I have things that are more serious, I have things that feel old, I have things like this that feel kind of appropriate for the fall time. I have enough variety already. And with Lenormand as a system, you don't get a lot more from different artwork. That, you know what I mean? Whereas with tarot, you dive into the symbology and the artwork. Lenormand's a very blunt, direct, straightforward system where the differences in the artwork don't change the meaning of the card pretty much at all. So in my experience anyway. The House of Shadows is really great because there's some bonus cards here that add something to the system, which I think is really, really cool. But I don't see the need to replace this with a new version of the same thing just because it's in color. Like I suppose worst case, I could literally get out my markers and like color this. Because it's actually, is the cardstock shiny? It's like semi-shiny. I could take Sharpies to this if I wanted to add pops of color, which actually might be kind of a fun project at some point. So yeah, I don't really need the new colored version of either House of Shadows or Shadowland, whatever it's called. It'll be on the screen for you guys, but I'm doing this from memory, so like, bear with. Actually, what did I write down? Yeah, I did write down Shadowland Lenormand, so that must be what it's called. Anyway. Not going to buy the new one because I have this one. So kind of a cheat, again, sorry, but it's true. It's like the literal process I went through. So there you go. The other one, this was brought to my attention by my friend Deb, is the Yarn Tarot. This looks cute, and I will admit the side of me that absolutely loves Yoshi's Woolly World and Yoshi's Crafted World, which if you don't have a Nintendo and have not played those games, you really should. They're meant for kids. They're great. They're perfect. They're relaxing. Anyways, I love the idea of textile art in tarot. That actually really, really, really appeals to me. Off the top of my head, the first textile deck that I had and loved is the Textured Tarot, which I didn't pull to show you. But in general, I really like that textured, that clothy feeling in tarot. I love that. Another deck was, I think it was called Tarot of the North Atlantis or something like that. It was a watery deck. I think that one's out of print, so I don't think I was able to get my hands on it. But that one always really attracted me as well. And the one in my collection, wait, let me back up. The reason I decided not to buy the Yarn Tarot is because the illustration style is really fun in that it has lots of nods to literal yarn and spinning and weaving and things like that. Super cool that way. The actual art style itself wasn't necessarily calling to me. It felt a little bit flat for me and a little bit two-dimensional, for lack of a better way to say it. What I was missing in that deck, what got me excited was the idea that it might look textured or might look like it's got yarn in it or whatever. And it does, but in this very kind of flat way, which I didn't feel like called to me the same way. But a deck that I've actually recently acquired and have not worked with yet, so it's still hanging on my to be worked with deck. I filmed the walkthrough, I don't think I've posted the walkthrough yet, is the Enchanted Tarot, the 25th anniversary edition. Can we talk about these backs? They're beautiful, and how tall and like big and glorious these cards are. But if you want a deck that has texture, this deck has so, I'm just going to look at it and not share. I will share again in a second. But this deck, oh my gosh, it's got so much texture. It's literally like fabric collage. It's so awesome that way. I would say this deck has more texture than the Textured Tarot. And I love this. This is exactly what I think of when I think of like fabric art in tarot. This really, really, really appeals to me. There's another one that I didn't end up getting, and I don't think I would actually really work with, but is really cool and you should check out, called the Embroidered Forest Tarot, where the entire deck was done from embroidery. But if you want something that's got like real fabric, like real texture, this is just not to be beat. This is such a cool deck. And there's some really neat things about the way that this deck is put together. I'm going to stop showing cards because I have to stop. But I'm really excited to work with this. I just haven't yet, but I'll probably spend a month with this deck at some point this year. We'll see. We'll see how the year goes. It's flying by. We're already almost halfway there. But this is really, really beautiful. And because I have this, I was not tempted seriously by the yarn tarot, but it is really a cool concept. And those of you who are really into like knitting or crocheting or fabric arts or weaving or spinning, and I've done all of those. Well, I've done crochet, I've done knitting, and I've done weaving and spinning. Not weaving, spinning. I've done spinning, drop spindle spinning and kick spindle spinning, and I get really into that kind of stuff. I'm like a hobby squirrel. Is anybody else a hobby squirrel? Where like I'll take up like a hobby and I'll do it for a little while, go really all into it, and then I'll like get bored and I'll move on. I do that with a lot of my hobbies, and definitely crocheting, knitting, and spinning were all like hobby squirrel things for me, where I really enjoyed doing them. I got really into them for a time and then moved on. So yeah, if you're really into those things, the yarn tarot, if you like the art style, might be like right up your alley. It just was one that I could say no to myself about, so I did. Another deck that, or the last deck I guess in this series that I'm not going to pre-order is the Sacred Forest Oracle. This looks pretty, and I've been watching this for a long time. I've been watching this deck since the first time I saw a preview image show up in a Facebook group somewhere, which was ages ago, before there was any card image previews, anything. I'll tell you honestly, the first thing that stopped me on this deck is the fact that it's Hay House, and I'm so disappointed with their current card stock. Again, nothing wrong with the current card stock. I want to really stress this. Like, I am a cardstock snob, and my cardstock tastes seem to change all the time. So like I can be very mercurial in this area of my life, but I'm currently very turned off by the current cardstock that Hay House is using. And as this is a Hay House deck, and I was so disappointed by the Shaman's Dream Oracle and just the way that felt, this Denise Linn's Sacred Forest deck, which looks really, really beautiful, I just realized I was going to be so likely to be critical of it because I just had this experience with Shaman's Dream that there was no point in me buying this and then putting myself through that again. Like, I don't want to go through that again, okay? Okay? Anyway, so I was trying to think, what do I have in my collection that gives me that Sacred Forest kind of feel? And I was like, wait, Sacred Forest, Sacred Destiny. So the Sacred Destiny Oracle, which is it also by Denise Linn? I think it is. I think they're both by Denise Linn. Sacred Destiny is definitely by Denise Linn. Is the Sacred Forest Oracle really Denise Linn? I think it is. I don't write the creator names down on my notes. I just put the titles of decks. So I'm going purely by memory. But this deck is so gorgeous, and this recently won in a this or that episode, which if I remember I will link in the description box. First of all, the backings are the ocean. Hello. Also, this is just a really beautiful deck that really draws you into the scenes that you see in the cards. I recently saw photos on social media of somebody who had trimmed the tops and the sides off this deck, and it looked so beautiful that this is on my to-do list because I think that will really add to this deck. But even without that, even with these big white borders, they almost look like Polaroid images almost of these beautiful scenes. This would be a stunning deck for pathworking, and the keywords are really great. I think one of the things that keeps me from that keeps this deck sort of near the top of my mind when I'm thinking about really beautiful landscapey kind of oracle decks is that Dustin really loves this deck, and hearing him talk about it always like reignites my excitement about it. But it's really, 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 really pretty. So I don't need the Sacred Forest, and this is also I'm pretty sure this is a Hay House deck. Yes, this is a Hay House deck, but it's on really nice cardstock. This cardstock is like smooth and silky feeling, not clingy, not papery. It just feels nice. It's matte cardstock done right. It's not super thick. I think it's about the same thickness as their other recent decks. It's just got a better coating on it. I think that's really the defining difference, maybe. Maybe it has a different core. I don't know. But it feels lovely. I love this cardstock. Hay House, go back to this, at least. Or that Mystical Shaman cardstock. That was something special. Anyway, I'm a cardstock snob. What can I say? I really am. But this Sacred Destiny Oracle really fits the bill. It's beautiful. It's got really good expansive keywords. I don't need the Sacred Forest. And when it comes to this kind of mass market oracle, I'm really picky because if you have a whole bunch of these kinds of decks, I feel like they can start to feel very samey in your collection, even though they're not necessarily all that samey. So yeah. All right, that brings us to our final category, which is Kickstarters I didn't back. And in the interest of keeping this kind of tight, because these videos always tend to run long, I picked only 2, but there are actually quite a few Kickstarters I said no to recently because there's just been things coming out where I'm like, I don't need it. I want it, but I don't need it. And I think I'm just trying to keep things curated. I'm trying to keep things tight. I try to keep my collection at a place where I don't feel overwhelmed. I've talked about all this in this video already. So one of these is a cheat and the other one is not a cheat. So let's get the cheat talked about first. I did not back the new printing of the Numinous Tarot by Cedar McLeod. I wanted to. I really wanted to. So I backed the Threadbound Oracle by Cedar McLeod last year on Kickstarter, and at the time I didn't have the Numinous Tarot. So I backed the Threadbound Oracle at a tier that would get me the Numinous Spirit Oracle, or the Numinous Spirit Tarot, excuse me. So I haven't had the Numinous Spirit Tarot that long. This current printing is going to be the same cardstock as the Threadbound Oracle. And the cardstock geek in me really, really wants that deck because the cardstock will match Threadbound Oracle, which I frequently pair with the Numinous Spirit Tarot. And that just was really appealing to me. But financially, like just from a common sense standpoint, it just didn't feel like a smart thing for me to do, to buy the new version of that or back the new version of that when I have basically a brand new copy of the first printing, or the second printing, or the previous printing of the Numinous Tarot. So I have this one. Yes, it is glossy. I may regret this decision. If this deck gets a lot of play in my collection, I will probably upgrade it at some point to that other cardstock because I really, really prefer the other cardstock. But this is essentially brand new to me. And I don't feel right about bringing something in and then immediately bringing in a replacement for it. It's one thing with decks like the Enchanted Map that I've used for years that I've upgraded, or the Art of Love Tarot, which recently is upgraded to the Tarot of Light. I recently upgraded that deck. I say upgraded because the cardstock's different now. I've done it with a few decks, but those are decks I've had for a long time and have seen a lot of use already. Whereas with this deck, I just got it. Like, I feel like I just got it. I haven't worked with it for that long. I just keep like looking at the cards and not sharing them. But this is a great deck. This is a really inclusive deck. It's very colorful and vibrant. And when I say inclusive, this deck does inclusivity, I think, and diversity really, really, really well. We have ability, we have race, we have age, we have body shape and size, we have gender diversity. It's just really, it really runs the gambit. While also managing to have this beautiful, like, fantasy fairy tale world that's really immersive and gorgeous. Cedar's work is impeccable, in my opinion, and is so evocative and gives you so much as an intuitive reader, too, to just like jump on and like roll with. I really enjoy this deck a lot. But again, I haven't had enough time with this deck to know if it's appropriate for me personally. Like if it makes good sense for me to upgrade it. I mean, I'm aware that I could upgrade it and just trade or gift or something this version. By the time that Kickstarter campaign fulfills and ships, I may change my mind on this because I do really love this deck, and having the other cardstock, I might even reach for it way more for client readings. That's something I need to think about too. I'm already trying to talk myself into buying it like right now. Can you see it happening? We'll see. We'll see. But decks like this are decks that I really enjoy pulling for client work. I'm at a point in my client practice where I'm a lot more selective about which decks I reach for and why. And I'm always, always quickest to reach for decks that feature a wide variety of people like this because I want, ideally, my clients to see themselves in the decks that I pull. And while I know that's not always possible, and nor is it even strictly always necessary, I think, for everybody, it just makes me feel better as a reader to have decks like that I can really pull for just about anybody. And this is one of those. So the fact that it's glossy, I don't reach for it as much. Okay, I'm going to stop because I'm totally talking myself into buying it. We'll see. When it comes out, I will maybe have to scoop it up. We'll see. We'll see. I'm trying not to make an irresponsible decision, though. Do you see this process? I'm like, I just got this. I need to not make an irresponsible decision. So I'm trying to be responsible. I'm trying to be an adult. I'm adulting right now, very emphatically. Okay, let's move on because, yeah, I need to not think about that one for a minute. So the other Kickstarter that I didn't back that I was super tempted by and had actually been following its creation for a long time is Exquisite Familiars. If you haven't seen the Exquisite Familiars Oracle deck on Kickstarter, I think it's now funded and it's in its process. But if you didn't back that one and it's catching your attention, like it's so unique and special. This is another one that I could see myself potentially caving on because it's so unique. But the reason that I've talked myself out of it for now is that I realize I don't reach for my super, super really unique Oracle decks that often. I also really enjoy them, but I I enjoy them in such specific circumstances. This is where I can get really boring in my practice, but in a way that really suits me, where there's certain times I just really want bread and butter. You know what I mean? Like I want that really like standard kind of feel to a deck, particularly when I'm thinking of decks that are very versatile and that I can use in lots of different ways. Those tend to be more, I guess, stereotypical kinds of decks. So my most unique Oracle deck is by the same creator in my collection, and that is the Lucky Potions Oracle. This is such a great deck. I recently showed this on a This or That, and I ended up keeping this deck because it is just so unique and cool. First of all, the backs. And this is by Richard Howdy Jr. There's another name, Oddity. There's a Pixel Occult. I'm probably getting this wrong. Anyways, there's another name for this creator somewhere, I think. Anyway, stop babbling, Lisa. This is what the backings of this deck look like. This is the front, and these are all different potions, and there's a dice in here, so you could draw a card, and then you can roll the dice to see if you are drinking the potion, throwing the potion away from you, or sharing the potion. And so it's just a different way to interact with the energy of that card, and it's a really cool, unique system. I love it. The thing about the Exquisite Familiars Oracle is that it reminds me of like being a kid and having those like fashion flip books or fashion plate things that you would rub your crayons on. Do you guys remember those? You would have different plates for like head, body, and feet, and you'd change them out, and then you'd put a piece of paper over and you'd color with the side of your crayon over it to like make a different design. Do you guys remember that? Am I totally dating myself? Does anybody know what those things are called? Anyway, it reminds me of those, or of flip books as a kid, where you would literally have a book and you'd flip a different head and a different body, or a different upper half of their body and a different lower half of their body. That's exactly what Exquisite Familiars is as an Oracle deck. It's like each card is like either the front half or the back half of a creature, and like you mix and match them, so you have certain heads and certain backs, bodies. I don't know. It's really kind of cool. And then based on the two that you've paired, you get like sort of a combination that makes a meaning. It's so creative and special. That's one thing I really love about Richard's creations. They're always so creative and special and unique. So I was seriously tempted by it. But I'm like, am I going to use it? And also even the Oracle, even the book is set up that way, like a flip book. So you could match up front half, back half. It's so creative. Am I talking myself into this one too? No, we're going to be good. We're going to be good. We're going to wait. We're going to wait. If I still want it in a little while, I'll purchase it. Because you can still get the Lucky Potion Oracle on Richard's Etsy shop. So I will, again, have links to everything down below. But I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. But it's really tempting. It's just so unique. And it's like, it's so unique that I'm like, will I pair it with anything? How will I use it? Will I reach for it? Do I want it just as like a toy? Like, is it like an Oracle toy for me? Like, what's the story? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that one turns out. If I actually end up like springing for it or not springing for it. But oh my gosh, we made it through everything. We made it through the whole list of things I am not going to buy currently. I cannot wait to hear from you guys on any of these choices. Would you make the similar choice? Would you? One thing I love hearing from you guys about, which if you ever feel compelled to share, please do, is when I've said, oh, I'm not getting this deck because it reminds me of this deck in my collection. Sometimes you guys are in the comments being like, I can't believe you thought of this deck. I would have thought of that deck. So because you guys kind of know what I have, right? Like if you could think of something that also scratches the itch, or if you have feelings to share with me to help keep me talked down, or maybe to talk me up about anything I've decided not to buy, share all that down in the comments below. I especially wouldn't mind being talked into that new version of the Numinous Tarot. So like if you feel like talking me into that, feel free. Same thing with Exquisite Familiars. I could be talked into that, I think. But yeah, these are the things I've currently decided not to buy. We'll see where I end up at the end of the day, but this is where we're at. Thank you so much as always for joining me for my Auntie haul. These are a ton of fun for me to film. I can't wait to film the next one. I try to space them out, you know, like really draw out the joy for myself, but I'll probably be doing another one soon because there's been a lot I feel like I've been saying no to lately, so I have a lot to say on this topic. In any case, thanks again so much for joining me. Please do be sure and click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new here, and click the little notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos. And if you watch primarily on a mobile device and you're clicking that notification bell, make sure you've also selected to receive notifications on your device or they won't work. I learned that a while back. It's like you can click the bell, but if you have notifications on your phone turned off, you're not going to get the notification when I go live or put up a new video or whatever. So if you want to get those notifications, make sure they're turned on your device. I think that's about it. I'm going to head out. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys. traffic noises.